Has this ever happened to you where your kindness, freely offered, is met not with gratitude, but with coldness, suspicion, or even hostility? Where the very warmth of your open hand seems to ignite resentment in the other? You wonder silently, what crime have I committed except the sin of being kind? Yet beneath this tension lies one of the oldest truths in psychology. People do not merely see you, they see their own shadow in you. Carl Jung wrote that the shadow is the part of the psyche we exile, the constellation of impulses, wounds, and fears we deny in ourselves. When you are kind, genuinely kind, you often stir that shadow in another. Your light becomes their mirror, and mirrors can be unbearable to look into. The woman who is graceful, compassionate, and generous does not only embody sweetness, she awakens in others the unhealed memory of their own failures to be kind. And so what you experience as hatred, jealousy, or coldness is rarely hatred of you at all. It is hatred of what you reveal. Imagine a soul starved of love watching another radiate it without effort. Imagine a man who has never forgiven his own weakness standing before a woman whose gentleness exposes the brittleness of his armor. Imagine a friend who has learned to survive by sarcasm and cruelty, being confronted with your refusal to play that game. To them, your kindness is not neutral, it is confrontation. It is reminder. It is proof that another way exists, and proof always offends those invested in denial. This is why, paradoxically, kindness can provoke contempt. Because kindness is not weakness, it is strength restrained, and strength when it does not conform unsettles. The Romans, and later the Stoics, knew this truth well. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You cannot expect figs from a fig tree if it has no fruit." In the same way, you cannot expect gratitude from those who cannot yet bear to see themselves. Their contempt is not a judgment of your worth. It is the natural defense of a fragile ego against the unbearable weight of truth. But here lies the deeper psychological current. Many women, conditioned to believe that kindness is their currency of value, feel shattered when that gift is not received. They confuse rejection with failure, hostility with deserved punishment. Yet Jung would insist this is projection. The hatred you encounter is not yours to carry, it belongs to them. They hand you their shadow as if it were a gift, but you must learn not to unwrap it. The ego seeks to drag others into its storm, to make them co-conspirators in its illusions. If you accept it, you enter their labyrinth. If you refuse, you remain sovereign. Still, it hurts, does it not? To extend your hand only to feel it slapped away. To walk into a room with warmth and leave carrying ice. To believe that kindness should soften hearts only to find it hardens them against you. This is where emotional alchemy is demanded. Kindness, to be sovereign, must be detached from outcome. If you are kind in order to be loved, you have made your kindness into a contract, and others will sense the subtle demand. But if your kindness flows as a natural extension of your essence, untethered to how it lands, it becomes unassailable. The woman who understands this enters a new archetype. She ceases to be the pleaser, chained by the need for approval, and becomes the sage, the warrior of the inner realm. She realizes that every glare, every whispered resentment, every unfounded hostility is not a verdict on her spirit, but a revelation of the other's prison. And once you see that prison clearly, why would you beg to be let inside? It is a strange truth that the more luminous a soul becomes, the more shadows it will attract. Light reveals dust in the air. Purity exposes corruption. Authenticity unsettles those still acting on borrowed scripts. And so, as Jung taught, one must learn to endure the tension of opposites, to be kind and misunderstood, generous and envied, soft yet condemned as weak, to endure without bitterness, to remain sovereign without withdrawing into cynicism, is the path of individuation. And you must decide. Will you allow another's projection to rewrite your essence? Will you shrink your kindness to avoid their envy? Will you poison your well because others cannot drink without choking? Or will you step fully into the paradox, knowing that being hated for your kindness is often the clearest sign that you are living in truth? Because ultimately, the soul that is whole does not barter kindness for approval. It does not measure its worth in the fragile scales of another's ego. It gives, it radiates, it exists in alignment with itself. And if hatred follows, so be it. The storm that rages outside cannot touch the flame that burns within. The deeper one ventures into this truth, the more one realizes that kindness is not merely a gesture, but an archetypal force. In its highest form, it becomes the embodiment of the Great Mother, nurturing, protective, boundless. Yet for those trapped in their own wounds, such energy does not soothe. It threatens. The orphan psyche, the one who never received unconditional love, does not know how to metabolize it when it finally appears. Instead of gratitude, it feels suspicion. Why are you giving me what I do not believe I deserve? This suspicion mutates quickly into resentment. To accept your kindness would mean acknowledging that one's entire worldview, that love is scarce, that softness is weakness, that cruelty is survival, has been built upon sand. And most egos would rather protect their illusions than step into the terrifying freedom of truth. Thus, when you smile warmly, they recoil. When you offer generosity, they spit venom. It is not your act they despise. It is the implication that another way is possible. For to admit that is to confess their own chains are self-imposed. Jung called this resistance the tyranny of the shadow. What is repressed, denied, or hidden within us inevitably leaks out and attaches itself to others. A man who despises his own vulnerability will despise the woman who embodies it openly. A friend who denies her own envy will cloak herself in passive-aggressive remarks. When standing next to your quiet grace, even strangers sensing your centeredness may project onto you the unresolved wounds they carry. To them, you are no longer a person. You have become a canvas for their unconscious. And here lies the trap that devours so many women, believing that if only they were kinder still, they could dissolve that hostility. They give more, they soften further, they overextend until they are drained. But shadow cannot be healed by appeasement. The more you sacrifice yourself at its altar, the more it feeds. Hatred is not hunger that kindness can satisfy. It is poison looking for company. To answer it with endless giving is to mistake self-erasure for love. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. Seneca wrote that the insult of another is nothing unless you accept it. To allow another's bitterness to dictate your worth is to hand them your sovereignty. You cannot control the storm that rises in another's heart, but you can refuse to let it shatter your calm. The woman who learns this stands like a mountain. Winds may howl, rains may fall, but she remains unmoved. Her kindness becomes no longer a bargaining chip, but a declaration of who she is. And yet the paradox persists. To walk this path is to embrace misunderstanding. You will be accused of arrogance when you stand in quiet dignity. You will be called manipulative. When your kindness exposes another's hunger for control, you will be painted as weak for refusing cruelty, or worse, as threatening for embodying a love they cannot endure. This is the price of individuation, the loneliness of refusing to betray your essence for the comfort of the herd. But what if this loneliness is not punishment, but initiation? Jung believed that the soul cannot individuate without enduring exile from collective approval. When you are no longer willing to contort yourself into the shape others demand, you will find yourself cast out from their fragile circles. And in that exile, you discover the strength of solitude. You learn that peace is not found in being liked, but in being whole. So ask yourself, whose shadow are you carrying today? Whose hatred have you mistaken for a judgment on your worth? How often have you bent your back in apology for a crime you never committed? Each time you do, you step away from your center. Each time you internalize their resentment, you trade your light for their darkness. Yet you were not born to be a scapegoat for the unhealed. You were not born to dim your flame so others might feel less exposed in their darkness. You were not born to barter away your essence for a counterfeit belonging. You were born to stand, radiant and unashamed, even if that radiance provokes envy, even if that kindness calls forth hatred. Because in that moment, your very existence becomes medicine, though it may taste bitter to those not ready to heal. And this is the secret hidden beneath their contempt. Often, the very ones who hate you for your kindness are the ones who, in their private hearts, long for it the most. But longing covered in fear transforms into hostility. They are not rejecting you. They are rejecting the possibility of what could be. And so their hatred is, in a twisted way, proof of the impact your presence carries. There is a certain cruelty in the human psyche. People often despise in others what they secretly crave for themselves. Jung observed that envy is nothing but desire twisted by shame. When you are kind, when your words carry softness and your actions speak of generosity, you awaken in others the dormant ache for a love they never allowed themselves to receive. But because their ego cannot confess this longing, without admitting vulnerability, it transforms the hunger into hostility. Instead of saying, "I wish I could love like you," they hiss, "Who do you think you are?" Your kindness exposes the cracks in their armor. For many, armor has been their only survival. A childhood of neglect, betrayal, or humiliation often forges people into brittle warriors who mistake coldness for strength. When someone appears who chooses gentleness without being weak, who embodies compassion without surrendering her dignity, the fragile foundations of their identity tremble. They must either question everything they have believed about themselves, or they must attack the one who reveals the lie. Most will choose the latter. This is why you are punished for qualities that should be celebrated, because when you embody light, you become unbearable to those still loyal to the dark. They do not hate you for being unkind, they hate you for being free. Freedom is the most terrifying sight to the imprisoned. The woman who does not seek validation, who gives without begging for return, who stands in her truth even when it offends, she is dangerous, because she cannot be controlled. And control is the lifeblood of the insecure ego. The ego, Jung taught, thrives on domination and defense. It cannot tolerate ambiguity. It cannot sit in the unknown. When you show kindness without condition, you are not playing by the rules of transactional power. You remove their leverage. You confuse their strategies. If they insult you and you do not collapse, if they mock your softness and you remain unshaken, you have exposed the futility of their games. And the ego, when unmasked, responds with rage. But here is where the true transformation begins. For if you understand that their hatred is projection, you no longer need to internalize it. You can observe it, almost with pity, as one might observe a child throwing stones at the ocean, imagining he can wound it. Their hostility may splash against you, but you are vast and their fury is small. You remain, and they exhaust themselves against your shores. Still, to embody this requires shadow work of your own, because let us be honest, kindness, when it is laced with unconscious desire for approval, will always wound you when it is rejected. If beneath your warmth lies the hope that others will finally love you, you will bleed when they respond with contempt. You will spiral into doubt, asking, what is wrong with me? Why am I not enough? But nothing is wrong with you. The wound is in the need itself. This is why true empowerment requires cutting that hidden cord, learning to give without craving a return, not coldly, not cynically, but freely. A tree does not hand out fruit in exchange for applause. The sun does not rise only for those who appreciate it. In the same way, you must become a force of nature in your kindness, not transactional, but inevitable. Then no rejection can disturb you, for you did not give to be received. You gave because that is who you are. And when you reach this state, hatred no longer terrifies you. You see it as confirmation that your light is real. You stop asking, why do they hate me? And start declaring, their hatred reveals their pain. You refuse to let another's projection drag you into self-doubt. You stop negotiating your worth in the market of fragile egos. You rise sovereign, knowing that their reactions belong to them, not you. The Stoics called this the art of indifference, not indifference born of apathy, but of clarity. Epictetus warned that you cannot control how others see you. You can only control the integrity of your own soul. To obsess over their judgment is to enslave yourself to chains you cannot break. But to stand in calm defiance, to embody kindness as your essence regardless of their reaction, is to master yourself. And this mastery is rare. It makes you untouchable. It makes you, in the archetypal sense, the queen, the one who does not bow to whispers, who does not shrink to soothe others, who rules her own inner kingdom without apology. Yes, she will be envied. Yes, she will be misunderstood, but she will also be free. There comes a moment when the pattern becomes unmistakable. You realize that every dagger of resentment aimed at you is not born from your cruelty, but from your refusal to betray yourself. This is the paradox of kindness. It is not the fragile flower the world pretends it to be. It is a weapon, sharp in its quiet defiance. Because in a world addicted to competition, to domination, to masks and manipulation, true kindness is rebellion. And rebellion, even when it takes the form of softness, will always be punished by those who fear liberation. Carl Jung understood this tension as the clash between persona and shadow. The persona, the mask one wears to be accepted, thrives on conformity, but the shadow, denied and repressed, festers beneath it. When someone lives authentically, refusing to wear masks simply to belong, she unconsciously forces others to confront the weight of their own disguises. Your kindness is not merely an action, it is an unveiling. You strip away their excuses, revealing that it is possible to live without constant armor. And for many that is intolerable. Consider the woman who has spent her life hardening herself against disappointment. She believes tenderness is foolishness, vulnerability is danger. Then you appear, radiant, unapologetically kind, moving through the world without the barbed wire she has coiled around her soul. In you she sees everything she exiled in herself. Instead of admiration, bitterness rises. For if she admits your way is possible, she must also admit her entire fortress is unnecessary. And how could she bear to dismantle the very walls she believes have kept her alive? Far easier to condemn you, to mock you, to call your light naive. And yet the archetype of the naive fool is a projection itself. For true kindness is never naive, it is chosen. It is the decision to remain open, though the world has given you 1,000 reasons to close. The naive are blind to darkness. The kind see it fully and refuse to become it. There is immense strength in that refusal. Do not mistake your softness for weakness. It is the ultimate form of mastery. But to carry this mastery, you must endure isolation. People will withdraw from you because your presence stirs their shame. They will avoid your gaze because they cannot withstand the mirror it offers. Some will whisper, some will slander, some will fabricate stories to protect their own self-image. Do not chase them. Do not explain yourself. Explanation is a form of begging, and you have nothing to beg for. Their rejection is not evidence of your lack. It is evidence of their inability to receive. The Stoics would remind you, what is not in your control is nothing to you. Their hatred, their envy, their twisting of your intentions, these are not yours to carry. They are weights forged in another's psyche, desperate to be handed off to anyone willing to accept them. Do not accept them. Let them fall. Return again and again to the inner citadel where your worth is beyond negotiation. It is in this citadel that individuation occurs. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole, of integrating the shadow without being ruled by it. The more you walk this path, the more you realize that being hated for your kindness is simply one of the initiation rites of individuation. To walk it, you must confront your own shadow, the part of you that longs for approval, the part that fears rejection, the part that secretly hopes kindness will buy love. Until these are faced, every sneer and every cold shoulder will pierce you like a blade. But once you integrate them, once you recognize that your worth was never conditional, those same blades cannot touch you. They fall harmlessly, like arrows into the ocean. And then you arrive at freedom, the freedom to give without chains, the freedom to love without being enslaved by whether it is returned, the freedom to remain radiant even in the face of envy, bitterness, or rejection. This freedom is not cheap. It demands courage, discipline, and the death of illusions. But once tasted, it is impossible to surrender. So remember this: if they hate you for your kindness, it is not you they hate. It is the mirror. It is the shadow. It is the unbearable possibility that they, too, could live in alignment, but choose not to. Do not dim yourself to soothe their fear. Do not trade your authenticity for their comfort. To do so would be to abandon your path. Better to be hated for your truth than adored for your mask. Better to walk alone in dignity than to sit surrounded in falseness. For the woman who embraces this truth ceases to be a victim of projection. She becomes the embodiment of sovereignty itself. And now the truth deepens. Kindness is not the end of the story. It is the crucible through which your true essence is tested. For every sneer, every cold shoulder, every whispered condemnation you endure is not simply the cruelty of others. It is life itself asking you a question. Will you continue to embody your essence, even when the world does not reward you for it? Here lies the most sacred threshold. Most falter at this point. They retreat. They harden. They learn to mirror the hostility they have received. A woman whose light was once radiant begins to dim herself. Convinced that survival demands conformity, she puts down her crown and trades it for the false comfort of belonging. But belonging bought at the price of self-betrayal is no belonging at all. It is a slow spiritual death. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Yet to become who you truly are requires standing firm in the face of misunderstanding. It requires enduring the hatred that kindness sometimes provokes. It requires holding your posture like a warrior of the inner realm, refusing to collapse even when arrows fly. This is individuation, the process of peeling away every false layer, every mask until only essence remains. Think of the archetype of the queen. She is not crowned by applause, nor is her throne secured by others' approval. Her power radiates from within, from the unshakable knowledge of her worth. When people hate her for her grace, it does not diminish her. It exposes their own unrest. When they envy her kindness, it does not reduce her. It confirms her sovereignty. The queen does not chase love, nor does she plead for acceptance. She chooses. She chooses herself. She chooses her path. She chooses her peace. This is the transformation awaiting every woman who refuses to be broken by projection. When she no longer takes ownership of others' shadows, she becomes untouchable, not because she has built walls of stone, but because she has discovered the wellspring of her own essence. Deeper than every insult, wider than every rejection, she no longer bends under the weight of others' insecurities. She walks with the calm of one who knows, their hatred, is not a verdict, it is a confession. The Stoics echo this wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. The one who masters her judgments masters her life." And so, when you stop interpreting hostility as proof of your inadequacy, when you see it instead as the natural projection of a wounded soul, you disarm its power, you remain unshaken, you remain whole. And what happens then is extraordinary. When you no longer need their approval, you stop shrinking. Your presence expands. Your kindness sharpens into clarity. It is no longer desperate, no longer bargaining, but sovereign. It flows because it is who you are, not because it will be reciprocated. And in this state you become paradoxically magnetic. For the same people who once despised your light will begin to feel its gravity. Some will soften, others will flee, but none will be able to ignore it. You are no longer the pleaser, nor the martyr, nor the outcast. You are the one who has returned to herself. You embody the union of light and shadow, kindness and strength, compassion and boundaries. You do not flinch when misunderstood, nor do you chase explanation. Your life becomes its own declaration. I am whole with or without your approval. And so the story closes with liberation. Hatred, once your tormentor, becomes your teacher. Projection, once your burden, becomes your mirror. You see it clearly now. Every hostile reaction was never about you, it was about them. Every arrow of contempt was proof of the power of your presence. Every rejection was the initiation rite guiding you home to yourself. The woman who embraces this truth no longer fears being disliked. She no longer fears walking alone. She no longer fears that her kindness is weakness. She knows with a certainty unshakable as stone, her worth is beyond negotiation. And from this certainty her life takes on a new rhythm. She gives when she chooses. She withholds when she chooses. She speaks, she loves, she acts, not for validation but for truth. The storms of envy may howl, but they cannot touch her. The whispers of resentment may echo, but they cannot wound her. She stands radiant, sovereign, untouchable. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.